Welcome my friends, I have some very interesting information for you today. So you might be a creator or a non-creator or just enthusiast and you've been familiar with the channel and perhaps you've got yourself a PC. And we've gone through some absolutely amazing parts on this channel. But what are people, creators, actually buying and ordering? Like all the people out there, what are they actually using? Pugetsystems has released a very interesting article where they're actually going to give a conclusion or like an overview of hardware trends in 2023, where we can see what did people actually buy, which systems, AMD or Intel, which GPUs, and we're going to do an analysis on that. Let's go.
Looking for a cheap way to license your Windows? Check out Whokeys through the links in the video description. Make sure to use the code TN20
to get 25% off. Use your preferred payment method including PayPal or bank card. Go to your orders and copy the key.
Paste the license to the activation settings and you're all done. This license is for Windows 10, but you can upgrade it to Windows 11 for free.
Or you can buy Windows 11 Pro key instead.
They also offer Microsoft Office 19 license. Use the same code TN20
to get 25% off.
Check out whokeys.com in the video description below.
So firstly, if you do want to read this article, I'm going to leave it in the description below as well. And this has done by Matt Bark. Hi Matt. Big kudos to you for doing this. I can't imagine how much work this has actually gone into it and put all this data together so we can just enjoy it. So that's absolutely fantastic. Now, Pugetsystems has done this in previous years as well. So if you do want to check out the 21 or 22, you can do that. But, you know, they kind of don't make sense anymore. But right now, this is what gets interesting. As you can see, there's been a lot of new releases of hardware in 2023. So this is from last year, obviously. The charts are going to get very, very interesting. A little note on the chart here. This is not everything that's been sold in the world. This is just Pugetsystems, what they have been sold or what people have been ordering and buying from, you know, their store. So they are the ones who provide creator PCs for creators, whether you're photo, video, 3D, game developers, scientific, or some very high-end workstations, so from all the way to Marvel Studios or, you know, Hollywood studios to just a random YouTuber like you and me who just make videos somewhere online. So they do all sorts of things like that. The one thing that they don't do is gaming PCs, really. I think you might be able to buy one gaming PC in there. Actually, let's see if they do. Oh, look, they do servers as well, which is interesting. And that might actually explain some of the things that you're going to see, because I had a question about that. You have NAS, custom PC. So if we go here, let's have a look. Configure now. See, that's the interesting thing. It seems like this is straight away a creator PC, because look at the motherboard choices. There's literally one Z790 Creator Wi-Fi Asus. That's it. If we go to X670E, look, ProArt as well. Let's have a look at what do they offer for Threadripper. Okay, Asus one as well. So it looks like they're quite a bit Asus motherboard one. I bet this Intel Xeon is going to be Asus as well. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, they don't do gaming PCs. So let's take a look at this first chart here. So this is the CPUs and processors. And what you can see over here are the years on the bottom here. You can see from 21 to 23, just explaining some of the charts here. And then on the side here, we've got the percentages of these graphs here. So basically, if you add this point of the graph and this point of the graph together, you should be getting 100% at all points of the graph. So whichever you look, it's kind of how it splits between two separate systems here. So here we can see it's AMD Ryzen and Intel Core. So these are the mainstream processors. So what we have, like, you know, i5s, i7, i9s, and then Ryzen 5s to Ryzen 9, something like that. Now, interesting bit is that from 21 all the way to kind of October, November, like the end of 2021, you can see that AMD Ryzen is actually leading the pack. If you remember what happened in November 2021, or was it October 2021? Yes, it was in October. So somewhere around here at this point, there was 12th gen Intel launch, which meant that, look, Intel systems suddenly sold a little bit more. Now, I doubt that Pugetsystems actually sold a 12th gen at this point, because they do a little bit more testing before this actually launched. If you remember, there was hardly any DDR5 available there. So perhaps they did DDR4. So it was like a completely new launch of architecture as well as RAM and everything. So it dipped probably a little bit, but look at this. Around December bit here, Intel just went boom up massively, and Ryzen started to go down from December and is going on down on a slope ever since. So as you can see, since January 2022, there was a little bit of a point here where AMD Ryzen, the Ryzen 5000 didn't sell anymore because the 12th gen just was so much better. And then we had the 13th gen somewhere there, and then we had the 14th gen, and that's just been growing and is most of the systems that creators buy for video, you know, photo, 3D, they often have an Intel Core something processor in there. As you can see, from 22, around 70% plus here is Intel Core. Like, we're peaking 80 something percent in there, which is interesting. So even with the Ryzen 7000 launch, as you can see, there isn't that big dips down, which means that Ryzen, interestingly for creators, like we've been saying on this channel, it hasn't been as good. There has been 2 boosts here of Ryzen CPUs launched, so I'm not sure what happened in July or August 23, and in about October 2023, there's a little bit of a dip in there. Perhaps people bought Ryzen systems then, not sure, but that's very, very interesting. Next graph, what you can see here is the workstation CPUs between AMD and Intel. So now we have the Threadripper, Threadripper Pro, and we have Intel Xeon. And when we're looking at the graph, you can see the blue graph that goes down is AMD Threadripper. If you remember, this is Threadripper 3000 that goes down, 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 down. And roughly around May 2022, something like that, Threadripper just went down massively because they launched the Threadripper Pro 5000 series, as you can see somewhere around here, and 5000 series started to sell a lot more than just the normal Threadripper because there wasn't any Threadripper 5000 series. Remember, AMD promised that they're gonna release loads of, you know, CPUs on the Threadripper platform, but they actually just killed the platform and did Threadripper Pro instead. And as you can see, from around June 22, there's been no Threadrippers launched or bought at all because, you know, there wasn't anything out there, and Threadripper 3000 was just so old that it just did not make sense at all. And Threadripper 5000, as you can see, is absolutely dominating. So in terms of workstation CPUs, 85 to 95%. As you can see, this point here, this is probably 98% or something like that, has been AMD Threadripper Pro in just the end of 22-23, just Threadripper Pro 5000 series. Now, there was something that happened in the end of 2023. In here, as you can see, AMD launched Threadripper 7000 and Threadripper Pro 7000. So now the Threadripper system, boom, skyrocketed again because it's an absolutely insane platform. We've got DDR5 finally on the Pro platform. We have insane CPU power, and the Threadripper Pro 5000 is going down a little bit. Basically, AMD is splitting its own lineup, Threadripper and Threadripper Pro. As you can see, the Xeon really nowhere. This is just somewhere less than 30% at peaks here, but we're probably averaging somewhere around 15%, something around there is the Intel Xeon with the red line. And the AMD Threadripper Pro is this teal line there. So interestingly, in terms of high-end workstations, AMD is absolutely killing it, but in the lower-end client CPUs, or, you know, Ryzen and Core CPUs, we can see that Intel was higher. So that's interesting, that Intel Xeon just can't compete with Threadripper, which is so much better in pretty much every single way. Now, next, GPUs, and this is where things get a little bit more interesting. As you can see, there is no AMD or Intel graphs in here, and this is basically split between NVIDIA and NVIDIA. And NVIDIA GeForce, which is the gaming GPUs, what you have seen, and the NVIDIA professional GPUs, which used to be called Quadro, now they're just RTX A, well, it's RTX 6000? RTX A 6000, RTX A 6000 Ada. It's a little bit confusing in the higher end. So they don't have kind of a name anymore. They're not Quadro cards, they're A cards. And in generally, AMD company is actually shifting less from like graphics company to more like an AI company. And graphics is just going to be a little part of this. What does the AI? Or the graphics card will be kind of the hardware that accelerates the big AI, what they're offering. But, you know, they're big. Did you see the recent boosts in the stock market of NVIDIA GPUs or NVIDIA stock, where they just gained in like 12 hours around 300 billion or something like that in company valuation, which is like a whole company of Netflix in less than 24 hours gained in company valuation. That's pretty insane. If you're holding Nvidia company stock, you had a lucky day. Well, that just shows how, anyway, we're getting distracted here. The top blue line is Nvidia GeForce. So what we have is RTX, 4000, 3000 series cards. As you can see, they have been dominating quite a lot. Interestingly, in around March 2022, it's gone a little bit further down, and you can see a bump up in this part and in this part, and that's where we have the Ada cards probably going a little bit more, especially the end of 2023, this part here, where we have the AI development and AI is gaining. So a lot of companies, or even, scientific purpose PCs, workstations, they want to use the Ada cards because they have more VRAM, which is very often needed for these AI workloads. That's what we can see here and here. But basically, Nvidia is the ones that most of these people use because most of the workflows for creators, whether it's video, photo, 3D development, especially 3D, whether it's graphic design, modeling, architecture, simulations, game development, Nvidia cards are just so much better in terms of support, stability, and performance per dollar, and that's why most of the, that's why Nvidia cards are a little bit more expensive as well. AMD cards seem to be more like gaming cards, whereas Nvidia cards, even the gaming cards, can do a lot of professional workloads. Now, it is changing. If you've been around in the channel recently, it is changing a little bit, but that's what creators have bought in 2021 to 2023. Next, we have storage. So what have people been using? And this is storage for their primary storage, which means the operating system. Like, what have they been using? So one is SATA SSD, which is the blue graph. At the beginning of 2021, you see it's massively going down because the price of NVMe was going down, so it wasn't as expensive to buy anymore. Boom, and absolutely skyrocketed. But even the beginning of 2023, the NVMEs were about 60% of what people bought. You can see there's a little graph on the bottom here. The red is Blatter, which means hard drives. And you can see there's a few percent of hard drives in there. There's a little bit in there, here, and even somewhere over here, there's a little boost up in hard drives, which I was quite confused about, thinking in 2021 to 2023, like, who buys hard drives as a primary storage system? I was just thinking this surely, like, what's going on, especially creators in a creative workflow. But as you saw earlier, since they also provide some servers and network attached storage solutions, that's probably what this is, that we've got some hard drives actually sold for the primary operating system. I honestly don't think anyone's running Windows or Linux on a hard drive. I mean, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but on a hard drive, that's just not optimal. As you can see, some people still use SATA, and here, as you can see, 2023, there's about 7% here and here that use SATA as the primary drive, but the NVMEs are so much faster now that they do have pretty much everything. As you can see, in July 2023 here, 100% NVMe. So NVMe is absolutely dominating here, 90+% on average, which is, what we'd expect. Now, next we have primary storage capacity. So this is interesting. The primary storage solution, how much do we actually need for the operating system and programs, perhaps some little files here and there, your downloads, what you download off the internet, little documents and so on. How much do you actually need? As you can see, 512 gigabytes was about 50% here. As you can see, this graph is zoomed in now. The top line isn't 100% anymore. It is 70% because the sum of these graphs will be 100%, which is somewhere over there, if that makes sense. But as you can see, 50% was 512 gigabytes, and that's kind of still okay these days. But interestingly, people's need for primary storage has increased probably around mid 2021. You can see 1 terabyte is the one that's like on the top here, that teal graph here, which I would go for 1 terabyte as well. Now, 512 right now to me seems maybe a little bit, small, but 1 terabyte is completely fine. And as you can see, around 50 to 60% are even now around 1 terabyte. The red line here is a 2 terabyte drive. As you can see, about 30% here and above 30% in end of 2023 are buying the 2 terabyte drive as the primary drive. Now, I'm not sure why, perhaps because of the price per terabyte is cheaper on the 2 terabyte rather than on the 1 terabyte, and that's why they're going with the 2 terabyte one. I don't see why people need 2 terabytes as the primary drive for operating system and programs. because they don't require that large amount of files. And the more interesting thing is the 4 terabyte drive as the primary one. As you can see from mid 2023, people wanting 4 terabytes as the primary. I would get 1 terabyte as the primary and then 4 terabyte as the secondary storage solution. And what's more baffling is 8 terabytes. Who would need 8 terabyte as the primary storage? But as you can see, about 5 to 7% are wanting 8 terabyte as the primary drive. Most likely the Sabre Rocket 4.0 is what we can see there. My primary drive is 1 terabyte. I'm not sure what's yours. Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to know how much you're rocking as the primary drive, but that seems to be enough for me. But 8 terabyte is the primary. That doesn't make sense to me because you want to separate that in a creative workflow. You want to have one where the programs and operating systems are running, and then the secondary project drive where most of your assets and projects actually live on. And that's like a little bit confusing for me. I'm not sure why this is there, but interestingly, people are interested in that. But now all storage, not just primary, but all storage. What do we see? What do people use most of the storage in their systems? Now, Platter, as you can see now, is a little bit more higher. We've got slowly going down from 20% in January 2021, and roughly around 2022, we have less than 10% going down. And January 2023, we're probably around 5%, so 20, 10, 5, kind of going down. What we see less and less hard drives in the system. Probably because people buying external storage solutions like NAS or something like that, and they don't want it inside the PC. And PC cases actually have changed a little bit as well. They don't support as many hard drives as we used to, so people perhaps just buy NASs more. But there's still about 5% in the end of 2023 are using Platter drives as the storage in there. As you can see, NVMe is absolutely dominating this, which just means that this is not just operating system. We have secondary drives, and you can have a lot of NVMe drives. Now, I'm not sure if this is per drive or per capacity. I think this is per drive or per unit, whether this is SATA or NVMe, because in one PC you can have easily 4 NVMe drives. That's why the NVMe is driving so high for all the creators who need different project drives and perhaps running them even in RAID or whatever. That goes high. As you can see, SATA massively dropped after 2021, and even the secondary drives, some of them still SATA, but not as much, just because SATA SSDs sometimes, very often, are even the same price as an NVMe. So it might not make sense to go with SATA if you still have empty M.2 slots on your motherboard, because it's so easy to add the storage. But if we looked at this per terabyte, then we would probably see that the Platter would be somewhere around there, or perhaps something like that, just because the hard drive capacities are so much higher than NVMe. And the last thing we're looking at here is the operating system. So which operating systems do creators use? As you can see, Windows 10 has been like the absolute domination of most of the time here. And around October 2021, so as you can see from this point, Windows 11 was launched. And as you can see, Pugetsystems took some time, and roughly around December, the end of November, December, at this point, they started to sell Windows 11 devices as well. So Windows 11 installed from the get-go. And that was roughly around the time where Intel's 12th gen was also launched, which actually required Windows 11 because of the scheduling of the hardware and cores and things like that. So we can see Windows 11 slowly started growing, but Windows 10 was still quite strongly up there as the most operating system until roughly around a year later, almost 9 months later, in October 2022. Yeah, literally a year later is when the point was where everything changed and Windows 11 started to become the main operating system. And that's interesting because for creators, it's very important, the stability. Like the Threadripper Pro systems and Threadripper systems, they still required Windows 10 and they didn't work quite as well on Windows 11 until a year later when we had fixes and driver updates and all that and everything was stable, and then they moved over. Which is interesting to see that professional creators, they're not looking for the latest technology, they're looking for the stable technology. Because as you can see, a year later, we can see is when this changed. And still, Windows 10, a year and a half later almost, is still populating about 35% of the operating system sold. And even to this date, there's about 10% still sold on Windows 10. Now, this to me is slightly alarming, a little bit, because Windows 10 support only goes till 2025. So 10% people who buying this the end of 2023 have pretty much only 1 year of their system left, and means that they are gonna have to move on to Windows 11, which the best way to do that would be just to do a clean install. So I'm not sure. I think the Windows 10 should have died somewhere around 2023 January at this point, and then Windows 11 should have been somewhere around there, just because there's not that much support. So if you're giving them a creative workflow, it should support more than a year or two on their system, which is obviously they can just upgrade on their Windows 10 and just press that, but it can be a little bit faffy and annoying for their workflow for those who are just creators and don't know how to use this, because most of the people who are buying these systems are just, look, tell me what's the best for my workflow, great, show me, and they just never think about the hardware. They never check, you know, if the dust filter is full or, you know, are my temperatures high. They just want to do this. So changing an operating system, I think, should have been Windows 11 probably around this point. But I'm sure Pugetsystems has their fair explanation for this and why this has happened. Now, in conclusion, you can see that for the client or mainstream CPUs, Intel is leading. But Intel's done a few releases. Intel during that time has done 12th gen, 13th gen, 14th gen, and they're gearing up towards 15th gen. Now, AMD has only rolled Ryzen 7000. And can you see Ryzen 7000 has pretty much competed with 3 generations of Intel and still fairly competitive in terms of, you know, the performance. The only thing is with Intel's QuickSync feature for video editors, that's just so much better what you can, you know, have in Premiere Pro, for example. So that's why Intel is much higher. In terms of Threadripper, AMD is absolutely fine and there's no competition. I mean, all the servers are changing over from Xeon to Threadripper. So AMD is gaining so much ground and revenue from the server market, which we can see on all of the workstation PCs. Intel's, you know, Xeon launch was kind of like, what was that? Oh yeah, Xeon. AMD Threadripper launch for, you know, workstations and servers and Epic, you know, that's been so massive. And again, we see Nvidia absolutely dominating the GPU market, but I'm hoping that's going to change in 2024. And I think it's gonna, because we've got Intel coming with their GPUs and they are going to be very, very interesting. Because what we've seen on the first generation, if they're going to do the same with the next generation, I'm excited. I hope you are as well. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll meet you down there. If you do want to build yourself the best bang for buck creator PC, then it's down there. All the build guides, whatever your budget is, all there. And if you want to reach out to me, reach out in Minnect, which is in the description below as well. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, guys. By this time, we've probably reached 200K. Yeah, definitely we have reached 200K. So I appreciate you all, and au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir. Anyway, bye-bye.